Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 2 of Osiamo's podcast. And we're here today with Bernard Grobman, most recently producer and songwriter for The Spinners, but he's also worked with Maynard Ferguson, Dr. John, and a bunch of other famous people that also Broadway. And so we're going to learn all about that right now. And welcome aboard, Bernard. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm all right. Yeah.
So uh, I just want to start out by saying I really appreciate the support that you guys have been giving me,
Well, thank you very much.
and it's just really great. Very very good company. Very supportive company.
Thank you very much. We like to work, well, we like to work with artists, but we also understand that there's a whole bunch of working musicians out there that many people, even other musicians, haven't heard of, that are like making a living and doing a lot of good things with music. So the stars get all the attention, but so
They always need the stars. Always need somebody behind the scenes.
Exactly, someone behind the scenes to keep time and play the music so they can sing and do their solos and everything like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell me, what's it like working with the Spinners, and how did that project come about? And I'm really curious to learn all about it.
Well, it was very strange. It kind of very weird. It dates back somehow to the first national Broadway tour that I ever did, which was a national tour of Jesus Christ Superstar.
Okay.
Way back when I was like 22 years old. And I met these girls in Pittsburgh, and they had a friend. Their friend is part of the company that does press relations for like Beyonce and several other artists. And he was branching out into managing. So I over the pandemic, I produced a few records for some of the artists he was managing. And then suddenly he calls me one day and he says, "Do you want to produce the Spinners?" I said, "You mean the Spinners?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Okay." And they, I guess everybody during the pandemic, they weren't touring. So I guess they said, "You know what, let's make a new record," because they hadn't made a new record in, I don't know how long, got to be 30 years maybe,
Mm-hmm.
And and I started talking, and they had already had a record in the can, and they weren't very happy with the sound of that record. It sounded like an old record. And they wanted a record that was modern enough to get them on the radio.
Okay.
Okay. And so I kind of reverse engineered Bruno Mars, who's been doing the trick of a young guy on old records. So the Spinners are not spring. The current Spinners, there was only one guy left who was an original, Henry Fambro, who unfortunately passed away in February.
Right.
But he was the last one left. He's like 82 years old. He was 82 at the time. And by the way, he stayed at every session. When we did vocal sessions, he was there from the beginning to the end, 2:00 in the morning, whatever.
Wow.
Chilling, talking about the old days at Motown and everything. Okay. And so I did a record that was a little scary for me because it was modern. I did it modern on these legends, and I was very worried about it. And I got a lot of static about it. I mean, people would, "Oh, it's not like them, doesn't sound like them," and all this other stuff. I mean, I tuned their vocals because everybody gets tuned now. Everybody has to be tuned.
Right.
Most of the music I played about 95% of the music on the record. It was either samples or me doing the drum programming, keyboards, all the guitars. I did hire a couple of guys. I hired Tom Bones Malone from the Letterman show to play horns on one song, and this guy Steve Nathan to play keyboards. He's a Nashville guy. He's been on like 2,000 or 3,000 records down there, like Garth Brooks. I'm not Garth Brooks. George Strait. You know what I mean? Like people
Yeah,
like that, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And but other than that, I did everything. And then I got in a bunch of very young songwriters that I know. So, because I wanted the songs to be young.
Hmm.
Uh, and we did this record, and then various weird political things happened. And 3 years later, it got picked up by Reservoir Media, which is run by Faith Newman, who's she's notable for having signed Nas to Columbia Records, right? So
Okay.
she's running the company now. So very good A&R, and they put the record out, and we have gotten absolute rave reviews. I was so scared about what the reviews are going to. The reviews are going to say, "Why are they auto tuned? Why is this? Why?" Instead, they just rave reviews. So I managed to straddle the line just the right way, because some of the reviews even got what I was doing. They said, look, they're going for a little bit of a younger audience. It's a modernized version, but just as good as anything else. So,
Very cool. Very
so
cool.
that's what it was like.
So you played all the instruments. I see a bass in the background, I think, and some guitars. Your main instrument
Yeah,
is
I mean,
guitar, I think.
I'm a serviceable bass player.
Uh-huh.
I think I played bass once on a Salt and Pepper record too. I play keyboard. Some keyboards. I'm not much of a keyboard player. I do more programming than actual like playing, and guitars. Including lap steel on one of the songs. I did a country R&B crossover 3 years before this became the thing.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm sure our our viewers are wondering, what's on the wall behind you right there?
I mean that stuff.
Yeah,
Uh, those are some of my awards, not all of them. It's
very cool. You want to talk
uh,
about those, or
yeah, the Grammy nomination in the middle. It's a Grammy nomination certificate in the middle. That's for Miguel as a guitar player and composer.
okay?
I've been on some other Grammy nominated records, but that's my first one as a composer. So
Wow. Okay.
and then there's the gold record for the Miguel album.
Hmm.
The other one is SWV, platinum record for SWV. I mean, I've been on other platinum records in Vogue, a bunch of soundtracks, Jason's Lyric, Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood. That's a gold record. Um, a bunch of those. And then the skateboard is for a song that I did in Finland called Frontside Ollie
Okay.
that won their version of the Grammy. It's called the Emma Gala for Song of the Year, and it was a #1 record for 4 weeks over there.
Very cool.
And the kid's name was Robin. He was like 13. He's on Universal Music in Finland. So that's what's up on the wall.
Very
It's
cool.
going sideways over there.
So it sounds like a lot of your music is very like dance funk oriented. What are some of your influences? How did you get into that kind of vibe of the music?
Uh, Well, it's interesting about me doing the spinners, because back in the '70s I was a studio guy, right?
Hmm.
And to keep up with everything, I would practice along with, especially the sounds of Philadelphia records. Those, and I would listen to the guitar parts on those records and learn them, and then of course reiterate them in the studio when they needed a part like that.
Yeah.
And uh, and the scene in New York was a lot of the scene was disco music back then. I put on some disco records, and I
Mhm.
played a lot of Latin records that were like Latin crossover, jazz, funk records. And I don't know. I'm very open to any sort of influence.
Mhm.
Like I've done. Uh, in order to do like Broadway, you got to be able to do anything. So it's like I've done Broadway shows. I did Jesus Christ Superstar, which is kind of like a rock funk show.
Mhm.
I mean, if you listen to his little boogaloo bass lines and stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
And I did Grease, which was '50s rock and roll, and I
yeah.
did Big River, which was Roger Miller, was country. And everything in between. So you have to have sort of a bag of tricks. So when I started producing, uh, I mean, the scene in New York is mostly R&B records, especially when I fell into producing in New York. And I started producing in the 90s. And so my first job was like a 7-man boy band, maybe. I don't know how you would describe it, but they were actually a cappella. Now they're an a cappella group. They're called Naturally Seven, but they were signed as a regular singing group with 7 guys. I said, I don't know, man. You may not be able to give up your day job with 7 of you. I don't know how you're going to do this. But anyway, so I produced them. So I was working under this guy Dave Hall, who had produced What's the 411 for Mary J. Blige and Dream Lover for Mariah Carey and stuff. So, I sort of graduated into doing that sort of music, and plus it was easier for me to do because you do it with samples, you do it with drum machines, and I was able to demo the music at home. I cobbled together a home studio at the time and just started working.
No, very cool. And well, how did you get started in music? Was guitar your first instrument, or was
keyboard? Yeah, guitar. It was my first instrument was violin.
Violin, okay.
And my father was a violin player, and so he started. He was not a professional when I was alive, but he had been a professional before the Depression, and then he had to go get a real job, But he could still he went to school, so he could read music, and there were harmony books around the house and stuff, and so he taught me violin. Then the Beatles happened. I didn't want to play violin anymore. I didn't think it was cool. So I eventually wound up on guitar, and I taught myself how to play guitar. And because I knew how to read off of violin, I was able to learn how to read on guitar. Right. And that's how I wound up doing Broadway shows. I was self-taught through most of the beginning of my career. When I think back to the gigs I was doing, when I was not completely self-taught, because I did take some guitar lessons, but mostly self-taught. I was doing the Joffrey Ballet, in the orchestra of the Joffrey Ballet. I was in the orchestra for Alvin Ailey Dance Company.
Wow.
And plus I was playing Grease on Broadway. Grease was not the hardest show in the world, because it's 50s music. But I still had to read. You had to play when you were supposed to play,
Right. So you were doing reading gigs and not having ever really studied. You were just self-taught reading it.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, and believe it or not, later on I did study with some people. I studied with Barry Galbraith and some other people. Guys like Barry Galbraith, he was self-taught. All those famous guys that you know about, they're all there was no guitar method to learn how to play plectrum guitar. They were all self-taught. How do you learn how to read? You get a clarinet book and you read.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
So, because I was around when I think they just started Berkeley, and I did study teach myself out of the Berkeley guitar books. Okay. And I also Hindemith Elementary Training for Musicians. What was the other one? Some drum rhythm books. There were reading books from Berkeley that I used, and so I used books. It wasn't like I just walked in and just
yeah,
and learned stuff off of records.
Yeah,
wore out records.
Of course, yeah. That's coming from me personally, from a rock and roll kind of background. That's how it was the record,
right?
And the needle, right?
And,
like this.
And when I broke in, I was lucky because all the guys in the generation before me, they wouldn't bend a note, they wouldn't turn a fuzz box on. And if you could walk in to a studio and you could read music and play professionally and bend notes and turn a fuzz box on,
there you go. That was your competitive advantage.
Yeah. So there was that too, because I knew, and I'm not putting anybody down back then. You still had to be able to really play at a high level. Yeah. I mean, when I was doing studio work, I'm playing with like Anthony Jackson and Steve Gadd and Bernard Purdy and Steve Jordan and Marcus Miller. And sitting next to me is Hiram Bullock playing the other guitar or whatever. It's like you gotta have your stuff together for that.
Yeah. So, what do you think of the role of music? Do you think that it's up to the individual, or do you think school is a good way, or do you think that? Do you have any opinion on that, or?
Well, I was lucky because I grew up in New York. So how did I wind up doing Grease? I was subbing at Godspell. I met one of the big sales guys at Manny's. I go to Manny's when he decided I'm a great guitar player. So they back in those days they didn't let you touch a guitar unless you were like considered a VIP. So they used to let me try out guitars because I knew this guy Billy was the sales guy. And one day Billy's there, and this guy Bob Rose is there, who's the guitar player for Grease. He introduces me. I wound up subbing at Grease, right? Nice. Bob Rose was a big time studio guy, and so you could meet people like that. I did a gig at Max's Kansas City. Elliot Randall was on the other bill. Elliot met me, he became my mentor. Yeah. So if you don't come from New York, school will do that for you. That's right. What school does.
Right. Yeah. Put you in those situations where you have to.
Well, where you meet people. You're gonna network. In other words, it could conceivably be worth the price of admission just to do that networking, because that's how you get your gigs.
Right.
Yeah. You don't get your gigs because you show up and you can play good. Nobody knows you play good. They don't care. Yeah. So New York was an automatic networking program.
Yeah. Back in the day, it was even just hanging out on 48th Street. That was
right. And then when you did sessions, if you did a jingle in the morning, you're in a multi-room studio. You come out during the break. There's other guys doing other jingles in the other rooms. You're talking to each other. Hey, I can't cover this. Can you cover this gig for me? Whatever. There was that too. And then there was Jim and Andy's, where everybody went and got drunk. And later on, Possible 20. Where there were places where people hung out. And I guess there are places now that are kind of little scenes, but I don't see the kind of scenes that there were, in New York. Not in New York anyway. I don't know how.
I would agree with you. I mean, it's also back in the day, you kind of either had to be at home by your phone, or then there was the pagers at one point. And then
we had answering service. We had an answering service. Yeah, okay. And back in the day, we had answering machines in the primordial days, and later on, you got the fancy one. You could call in and get messages. You didn't have to get home. Right. And they even had some that would actually call your pager if you had a pager. But but we had an answering service called Radio and TV Registry, and everybody was on that. So if you were not on that, it'd be hard to get a call, because all the contractor had to do was call up Radio Registry, give them a list, and then and then they would call, and then what they would do is they track you down. Like, they'd have all your girlfriend's phone numbers, they'd have all the numbers of all the bars you hung out in. I've been tracked down at various places, and they'd find me somehow, and they'd call me for the next session.
That's right.
And what I used to do was I would, like, when I was doing the show, the office was close by. I called them up once and I said, "Hey, I'm going to Burger King. Anybody want a burger?" So I would bribe them with food because every once in a while they get down a list and they run out of people. So, hey, how about Bernard? He does some sessions too.
Very cool. So I guess how do you feel about the current state of the music industry? It's changed, or is it just what it is?
If I were a kid now, I'd go get a job programming AI. I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. I mean, it seems like the networking thing at the schools works.
Mm-hmm.
Because you see that going on.
Right.
I'm a little speechless about the way the business is because it's very strange.
Yeah.
It's very strange. I don't even understand how I keep on working. I mean, at this stage, because a lot of guys that I know are just not working anymore. So it's funny because when I started out, the old guys were doing all the sessions, and I had to play way better than they could to get in.
Right.
Really, they were blocking me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now it's different. Now it's like young guys get the sessions.
Yeah.
And that's how it is. And it's weird too because it's funny. I'll do some sessions, sometimes some hip hop sessions, and the guys say, "Wow, man, how do you sit down and just know what to play?" And I said, "Isn't that what you're supposed to do?" Like to me, that's not. That's not a notable skill.
Right. It's years of learning vocabulary and applying it, and
so it's like it's kind of like that. So I mean, I do have a publishing deal now, luckily,
that's
and
good.
So for them, I'm turning in music for syncs and things like that.
Okay.
And hopefully the Spinners are going to start performing the songs live. So I'm going to go see them at Jones Beach.
Okay.
And hopefully that kind of brings up the interest in the album. I think because of the good reviews, we're probably going to get some kind of Grammy nomination. I'm pretty sure.
Great. Yeah.
I mean, they were just inducted into Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in November. So
they deserve it, right?
Oh hell yeah!
Yeah.
I mean, all the hits they've had, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
I mean, I'm amazed that I'm at least on that list. Of people who worked with them. It's like. I mean, I've been lucky because I've co-wrote with Melissa Etheridge. I co-wrote with Salt and Peppa. So I have all that. So it's besides playing guitar with them and stuff on records. So it's kind of like that. I mean, there really is no session scene of that sort in New York. The only thing left is Broadway, really, as far as real jobs go.
Right.
I kind of made a decision to dip out of that a long time ago, and may have been smart, may not have been smart. But I mean, I was, I did 20 years worth of pit work. So, I mean, if I were a cop, I'd be on full pension, So, I mean, other than that, the industry is weird. I almost got an artist signed to Atlantic Records a couple of years ago, so I really got to see the real insides of the. I mean, I do a little bit of stuff with Atlantic Records sometimes, so I have a little bit of insight into what's going on now in there too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about social media and things like that. But it's not all about that. It's also all about what the current trends are, and they have their metrics so perfect now. They can watch, they can see everything. In fact, I got a report on the Spinners album, and the number of lines on there was great. It wasn't just record, it used to be just record sales and airplay, but this was like Instagram, TikTok. It was like everything, and all these different streaming stores. It's crazy, So it's a weird business, but if you're smart and you know how to work it, and you got some good, in the end, they really don't care anything about anything unless you have a hit record. I mean, I worked for Rough Riders for a while as a house producer because I was replaying a lot of the samples and stuff. I was able to replay samples, and I said to them, I said, I didn't think you want anybody like me because I had a big, long, gray ponytail at the time, And I said, and they said, we don't care. We don't care if you're Methuselah. as long as you come in here with a hit record, we don't care. It's like, and
Oh, yeah.
that's what it's still about. It's just, is an old guy going to be able to figure out how to do a record that can actually speak to young people? That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I don't write lyrics, at all.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say to these people.
Yeah. I have two teenage children. I have no idea what to say to them half the time.
I feel for you, because I had a teenage artist here that I was a little bit responsible for, and now I have an idea what that's like to have kids. And I said,
yeah,
it's another job.
Yeah, it's with all the other extra distractions. Like, I was a teenager in the '70s, so there were distractions, but not like on the phone. It's kind of ubiquitous everywhere, like this bombardment of screens and social media. And when my son gets off of that, I mean, he shows a lot of interest, like, in music, and he'll play the keyboard. He's learning it, teaching it to himself by ear, because that's what he wants to do, and I'm not pushing him. But it's really hard, like you say. How do and it's amazing record companies can relate to a big enough, wide enough audience, regardless of the age, because there's so many distractions to get people away from what's going on.
Well, they've been relying on metrics, but a lot of that is they'll sign somebody, and let's say they're blowing up on social media, so they have some record that's blowing up,
Mm-hmm.
and this has nothing to do with guitar playing, by the way. We were supposed to talk about guitar playing because you make guitar picks.
Well, if you want to talk about guitar picks, I mean, you can, but this is kind of interesting. I mean, I'm sure I have as many viewers that want to know what the record companies do or don't do as playing.
Well, they've been struggling because, first of all, do you have any idea how many songs are uploaded to the internet every day?
I can only guess that there's probably millions. I mean, I imagine
22,000 a day, according to Chartmetric, which is the way that the record labels use that to track the internet. 22,000 a day, and Chartmetric ingests 44,000 songs a day.
Wow.
So you have to show that you can make noise that actually comes out. Even the biggest artists have a problem with actually coming out of that amount of background noise.
I'm sure.
And that's what the labels have created, a monster. And now it's, like the Frankenstein, the monster always comes back to get the creator, right? So they created a monster, and now the monster is really untenable. And so they're looking at different markets. Like the Latin market is better than that. And they like Afrobeat right now, and they like certain. I don't know if I'm giving out any secrets, but the problem with a lot of the pop records is that the pop artists they come out of TikTok, they blow up with one song, they get signed for $1 million. The label barely makes that money back, and then they can't make any profit because they can't get the second record out of them. And that's what they're dealing with now. Taylor Swift is different than just about any of this other stuff.
Right.
So
so we got about 5 minutes left. If you want to talk about picks, I'm happy to listen about picks or guitar or whatever. But I just want to say it's been great having you on and listening to. I mean, it's it's so cool to hear like what you're doing to remain as a working musician and doing the producing and the composing, and as well as the guitar playing. So it's very, thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate that.
Oh, thanks for having me on. And I did go to school eventually, by the way, and I studied composition, and knowing that stuff has helped deal with the sequencing and things like that. And I've done work on soundtrack music and stuff like that too. So because I was able to do that, it's all the same thing. It's music that you hear in your head. You know, it's music that you hear in your head. So you play guitar or you write music or whatever, you got to hear it. But
Got to hear
anyway, I
it.
wanted to say about the picks was that a friend of mine a long time ago, he hands me a bunch of picks that look like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I know, I tend to hold the picks very lightly, so they fly out of my hand.
Mm-hmm.
This thing had little holes in it, so I said, "Wow, this is staying in my hand." I didn't know what company it was until a friend of mine introduced me to you, and then I saw the picks on your website. I said, "Those are the picks that I wanted," because they really, even these guys here, they're made out of something that it doesn't slip.
Oh, right.
I don't
I think of
know.
the polyacetal ones or the white.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah. I don't know what the material is, but they don't really slip out of your hand. And because you're really not supposed to, you're not supposed to have a death grip on the pick,
Right.
you know. So, so they sound good too. There's a sound thing to them, I also have the chicken picks, these guys.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Those are definitely different than the Pick Boy picks.
Right, and I like the way they sound. I like the way they all sound. They import. And I use different picks to do different things.
Yeah.
So, and you guys have been great supporting me, and also the pedals. I have the Nobles pedal, which is a standard on it's got to be on everybody's board.
Yeah.
And that's all I can say.
Well,
But
great.
thanks for the support, and thanks for having me on this thing.
Oh, you're welcome. And it's been great having you. And look forward to hearing more about how the Spinner album goes. And good luck. And I hope you guys get a Grammy nomination for that and win it, of course. So
That would be way too.
that would be way too cool. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm the executive producer. That would be a I'd get my own statue for that.
But yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Wow. You have to make a special place for that for sure.
Well, the certificate's not bad either.
Carry it around with you when you go to gigs. What's that? It's my Grammy.
Right. I'll just get a T-shirt made out of it.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you very much, and have a great day. And I'll be speaking to you soon.
Okay. You too.
Okay. Bye.